The recent meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin in Anchorage, Alaska, on August 15, 2025, intended to address the Russia-Ukraine war, has sparked intense controversy and concern. A leaked video from Russian state media, released shortly after their brief press conference, portrays a troubling narrative. Putin emerging as the victor, basking in a carefully curated image of legitimacy and strength, while Trump appears to have gained nothing tangible for the United States or its Ukrainian allies. As Democrats, we view this summit as a diplomatic failure that not only emboldened an authoritarian aggressor, but also undermined America's global standing and Ukraine's sovereignty. This analysis delves into the implications of the summit, the propaganda win for Putin, and the urgent need to counter this narrative with a commitment to democratic values and support for Ukraine. The summit, a diplomatic misstep. The Anchorage summit, held at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson, was billed as a high-stakes effort to negotiate a ceasefire in the Russia-Ukraine war, now in its third year of brutal conflict. President Trump, accompanied by Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, met with Putin and two Russian aides for nearly 3 hours. The absence of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy was a glaring omission, signaling a troubling exclusion of the very nation whose future was at stake. Despite Trump's pre-summit rhetoric about securing a ceasefire, the outcome was stark. No deal, no concessions, and no progress toward peace. Trump himself admitted, "There's no deal until there's a deal," a statement that underscores the lack of substantive results. The press conference that followed was equally telling, described by observers as more of a staged photo opportunity than a substantive briefing. It lasted mere minutes, with neither leader taking questions from the press. This refusal to engage with journalists left the public with little clarity on what, if anything, was achieved. Trump's claim of a very productive meeting and Putin's vague assertion of an agreement that would pave the path toward peace were at odds, revealing a disconnect in their narratives. Putin's comments were carefully crafted for Russian domestic consumption, while Trump's insistence on progress appeared more about saving face than reflecting reality. The Russian propaganda victory. Russian state media, particularly Russia Today, seized the opportunity to shape the narrative. A leaked video, intentionally released with the Kremlin's watermark, showed Trump and Putin backstage after the press conference, engaging in what appeared to be a cordial exchange. The footage, devoid of audio, was strategically edited to depict Trump as deferential, clapping for Putin as he walked down a red carpet laid out at a U.S. military base. Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova crowed that the images countered years of Western claims that Russia was isolated, boasting they saw the beautiful red carpet laid out for the Russian president. This propaganda coup was designed to bolster Putin's image at home and abroad, portraying him as a global leader welcomed by the United States. Despite his ongoing aggression in Ukraine, the video's release was no accident. It was a calculated move by the Kremlin to project strength and legitimacy, reinforcing Putin's narrative that Russia can violate international law, invade sovereign nations, and still be treated as an equal on the world stage. For Russian audiences, the imagery of Trump applauding Putin and the two leaders riding together in the Beast, the U.S. presidential limousine, was a powerful symbol of Moscow's enduring influence. The fact that Trump, wittingly or not, participated in this spectacle is a profound embarrassment for American diplomacy. Trump's susceptibility to manipulation, perhaps the most alarming aspect of the summit, was Trump's apparent susceptibility to Putin's flattery. In a post-summit interview with Fox News host Sean Hannity, Trump recounted Putin's praise, claiming the Russian leader told him, "I've never seen anybody do so much so fast," and described the U.S. as hot a pistol. Trump went further, parroting Putin's claim that the U.S. was dead a year ago. A narrative that aligns with Trump's own rhetoric about America's decline under his predecessor, Joe Biden. This mirroring of language suggests Putin skillfully manipulated Trump by feeding him lines that resonate with his worldview, a tactic that Trump eagerly amplified to American audiences. Even more troubling was Trump's recounting of Putin's comments on election integrity. According to Trump, Putin claimed the 2020 U.S. election was rigged due to mail-in voting, asserting that no country has mail-in voting and that Trump won that election by so much. Trump's decision to broadcast these remarks on Fox News without challenging their veracity is a stark example of his willingness to amplify Russian disinformation. Putin, whose own elections are marred by fraud and who has been implicated in interfering in U.S. elections, has no credibility on this issue. Yet Trump, rather than pushing back, appeared flattered, undermining the integrity of American democratic institutions in the process about the exclusion of Ukraine. The exclusion of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy from the summit was a critical error. Zelenskyy, who has been a steadfast advocate for his country's sovereignty, warned that any decisions made without Ukraine's involvement would be meaningless. His absence underscored a fundamental misunderstanding or deliberate dismissal of Ukraine's agency in negotiations that directly affect its future. Trump's promise to call Zelenskyy after the summit to update him on the talks was a patronizing gesture, treating Ukraine as a bystander rather than a principal party. This approach risks alienating a key ally and emboldening Putin, who has consistently demanded territorial concessions and a diminished Ukrainian state. Zelenskyy's subsequent announcement that he would travel to Washington, D.C. on August 18, 2025, to meet with Trump suggests an attempt to reassert Ukraine's voice in the process. However, the damage may already be done. By sidelining Ukraine, Trump signaled a willingness to negotiate over its head, a move that aligns with Putin's long-standing goal of marginalizing Kyiv in international discussions. Democrats must unequivocally reject this approach and advocate for Ukraine's inclusion in all future talks, ensuring that any agreement respects its sovereignty and territorial integrity. Domestic political reactions. The summit's fallout has elicited sharp criticism from Democrats, who view it as a diplomatic debacle. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer condemned Trump for rolling out the red carpet for authoritarian thug Vladimir Putin, arguing that the meeting granted Putin legitimacy, a global stage, zero accountability, and got nothing in return. Schumer's remarks reflect a broader Democratic concern that Trump's approach not only failed to advance peace, but also weakened America's moral authority. Representative Jimmy Gomez D. Califf went further, accusing Trump of being played by Putin and calling for the release of files related to Jeffrey Epstein, a jab that highlights the broader distrust of Trump's motives and judgment. California Governor Gavin Newsom, a rising star in the Democratic Party, seized the moment to mock Trump's performance. In a tweet from his official press office, Newsom lampooned Trump's low-energy appearance, quipping that he looked like he'd eaten 3 buckets of KFC with Vlad. The tweet, written in a style mimicking Trump's own hyperbolic rhetoric, also referenced Newsom's recent political maneuvering over redistricting maps, suggesting he had outshone Trump in the domestic spotlight. While Fox News hosts decried the tweet as childish and insane, Newsom's strategy was clear: use Trump's own tactics to highlight his weaknesses and rally Democratic supporters. The fact that Fox News felt compelled to address the tweet on air underscores its impact, as it forced conservative media to confront the summit's shortcomings. Republicans, meanwhile, have offered a mixed response. Senator Lisa Murkowski, R. Alaska, expressed cautious optimism about the summit, noting signals that some level of progress was made, but emphasizing that Ukraine must be included in future negotiations. Senator Lindsey Graham, RSC, a Trump ally, predicted a ceasefire before Christmas if a trilateral meeting with Trump, Putin, and Zelenskyy occurs, though he acknowledged Putin's aggression and the need for a deterrence-based approach. These responses highlight a tension within the Republican Party. While some seek to defend Trump's diplomacy, others recognize the need for a more robust stance that includes Ukraine and NATO allies. The broader implications. The Anchorage summit has far-reaching implications for U.S. foreign policy and the Russia-Ukraine conflict. By hosting Putin without securing concrete concessions, Trump has inadvertently bolstered Russia's position, while weakening America's credibility as a defender of democratic values. The leaked Russian video, combined with Trump's fawning remarks, risks normalizing Putin's aggression and undermining the international coalition supporting Ukraine. This is particularly concerning given Russia's ongoing military actions, including overnight drone and missile strikes on Ukraine that killed 7 civilians and injured 17 others on August 15, 2025. Moreover, Trump's rhetoric about the U.S. economy being dead a year ago and now hot as a pistol reflects a dangerous willingness to adopt Putin's framing of American decline. This narrative dismisses the economic recovery under President Biden, which saw steady growth despite post-COVID challenges, and ignores the current pressures on institutions like the Bureau of Labor Statistics, where Trump replaced the commissioner, to manipulate job numbers. Such actions erode trust in American governance and play into Putin's hands, as they sow division and doubt among the public. From a democratic perspective, the summit underscores the need for a foreign policy rooted in strength, principle, and multilateralism. Peace through strength, as articulated by many Democrats, means equipping Ukraine with the military, financial, and intelligence support needed to negotiate from a position of power. Appeasing Putin, as Trump's actions suggest, only prolongs the conflict and emboldens authoritarian regimes worldwide. The lessons of history, particularly the dangers of appeasing dictators in the lead-up to World War II, must guide our response. Allowing Putin to dictate terms or gain legitimacy through high-profile summits is a recipe for further aggression, not peace. Countering the propaganda narrative. The Russian state media's leaked video is part of a broader propaganda effort that Democrats must actively counter. Right-wing media outlets and social media accounts have already begun amplifying clips of Trump and Putin together, such as the moment fighter jets flew over during their red carpet walk, to portray Trump as a strong leader. These images, often boosted by bots, create a false impression of diplomatic success. Democrats must leverage platforms like YouTube, X, and traditional media to disrupt this narrative, emphasizing the summit's failure and Putin's manipulation of Trump. This effort requires a multi-pronged approach. First, Democrats should amplify the voices of Ukrainian leaders and activists, ensuring that Zelensky's perspective is front and center. Second, we must highlight the human cost of Russia's aggression, sharing stories of Ukrainian civilians affected by the war to remind Americans of the stakes. Third, we should call out Trump's susceptibility to flattery and disinformation, using his own words to demonstrate his unfitness for diplomatic leadership. Finally, Democrats must advocate for continued support for Ukraine, including military aid, sanctions on Russia, and diplomatic efforts to strengthen NATO and other alliances. The role of social media and public discourse. Social media platforms like X have become battlegrounds for shaping public perception of the summit. The White House's post, captioned "Pursuing Peace," and featuring a photo of Trump and Putin, drew sharp criticism from Democrats for legitimizing a war criminal. One user's response: Putin is actively slaughtering civilians and children. He has invaded Ukraine multiple times. What a despicable post coming from the White House, captured the sentiment of many who see the summit as a betrayal of American values. Meanwhile, Trump supporters have pushed back, framing criticism of the summit as anti-peace and accusing Democrats of warmongering. This rhetorical inversion, whereby supporting Ukraine is painted as pro-war, highlights the need for Democrats to reclaim the narrative around peace and strength. Governor Newsom's satirical tweet exemplifies how Democrats can use humor and sharp rhetoric to challenge Trump's narrative. By mirroring Trump's bombastic style, Newsom exposed the absurdity of the summit and drew attention to its failures. However, such tactics must be balanced with substantive policy proposals to avoid being dismissed as mere posturing. Democrats should continue to engage on social media, using data, first-hand accounts, and clear messaging to counter Russian and right-wing propaganda. The path forward, the Anchorage summit, serves as a wake-up call for Democrats and all Americans who value democracy and international law. The United States must lead with moral clarity, supporting Ukraine's fight for survival while holding authoritarian leaders like Putin accountable. This means rejecting unilateral summits that exclude key stakeholders and instead fostering multilateral negotiations that prioritize Ukraine's sovereignty. It also requires a robust defense of democratic institutions at home, countering disinformation and ensuring that economic and social policies address the needs of working Americans. Not just the elite. As Democrats, we must articulate a vision of peace that is grounded in strength, justice, and alliance building. This includes advocating for increased military and humanitarian aid to Ukraine, strengthening NATO, and imposing tougher sanctions on Russia. We must also hold Trump accountable for his diplomatic failures, using every platform available to expose the dangers of his approach. By doing so, we can disrupt the propaganda pipeline that seeks to normalize Putin's aggression and restore America's role as a beacon of freedom and democracy.